Doncic wins the game at the buzzer.
The Board Bettor podcast.
What up, everyone? Welcome into the Board Bettor show, episode number 3. Back at it again. A little bit of a break between episodes. Unfortunately, a little bit sick in this household, but we are good to go again. We are joined by a very special guest as well from the other side of the world, my good friend, Mr. Spread Astaire. Spread, it's been a little while since we've had the chance to jump on a stream together. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you for inviting me. So excited to talk some NBA with you. And, hey, I like that intro music. That was smooth. And I saw the format that you sent over, and I said, this is great. I'm really excited to do this. So, I know it's been a while, but I'm glad that we could just jump right in and just get right at it.
Yeah, no doubts. I think we can absolutely kick things off as we have done in the past. For everyone that hasn't joined before for one of these episodes or shows so far, we do have 4 segments that we'll run through today. So we'll go through our homework review, which is a good chance to talk about things currently happening in the NBA where we can potentially get ahead of markets and movements there. We'll then get into our scouting report. Today, we're going to dive into the Golden State Warriors, which I think is a really interesting topic. It's always an interesting topic, I think, with them this season, but particularly now that we are past, I think, the halfway point of the season, and we still don't really know if they have it in them to flip that switch per se. We'll dive into our bets we've made, of course, give out our best bets for today, any potential other ones as well. And then, of course, the squad ride segment, which is all people really want to get into on this show. We'll discuss what our Discord DGens are looking at for today as their best bets. But Spread, like I said, let's jump straight into it. Let's look at the homework review and take a look at the current landscape of the league, anything that stands out to you that you've learned. I'll dive in first this one because I just want to touch on the Memphis Grizzlies. I mean, we spoke last week on the show about them on the scouting report. I still have my question marks on this team's playoff potential, largely because of their offense, particularly their half-court offense when it gets to that point of the season. But in the short term, they've lost Steven Adams, it looks like, for 3 to 5 weeks. That, for me, is going to have quite a significant impact on that offense for a couple of reasons. One, of course, Steven Adams being the absolute juggernaut he is when it comes to the offensive glass, producing those second chance opportunities for this team, which is even more important when their half-court offense ranks where it does, which is in the bottom 10 of the league in terms of points per possession. But 2, I think the one underrated thing as well that he brings to the table is he's a fantastic screener. These are the sort of the intangibles that don't necessarily show up on the box score and on the stat sheets every other night. But that, I think, plays a big role in getting the best out of Ja Morant, in particular in half-court sets as well offensively. So I'm just going to throw to you quickly. What do you think the short term for the Memphis Grizzlies without Steven Adams? Is there a potential that this might be a bigger out than what shows up in the marketplace?
Yeah, I agree with you. You mentioned some good reasons, and I'll throw in some of my own. Number one, I think he brings a toughness to that team that this team lacks sometimes. And, you talked about it earlier with your issues for this team in the playoffs. I completely agree. And I think that quote unquote toughness or maybe a lack of maturity could be an issue with this team, right? Hey, for a team that hasn't accomplished anything, they've got the whole NBA to get up against them like they're playing against the Golden State Warriors or a player like LeBron James or, the next best thing, the Boston Celtics, teams who I consider get the best effort from their opponents every single night. I know that you create your own numbers too, and you have to factor in, hey, these guys are going to get up to play against LeBron. They're going to get up to play against the defending champions, the Golden State Warriors, or if you're in the East, your reigning champions, the Boston Celtics. You see teams get up and outperform what we expect of them every single night. Now, the Memphis Grizzlies have managed to do that, just by pissing everyone off, by being arrogant, yelling in everyone's face after every dunk. And I'll admit, Ja has the best highlight dunks, right? So I'd be yelling if I could do that too. So I don't want to take too much away from this team. But some of that veteran leadership, a team that I think already lacked veteran leadership, now it's not on the floor. Now it's in the sideline wearing some clothes here. And it puts a lot of pressure on Jaren Jackson. Because right now, when Jaren Jackson gets in foul trouble, Steven Adams can kind of bail them out.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that was sort of the next point, was the pressure it was going to put on Jaren Jackson Jr., who, like I said last week as well, I'll reiterate once again, I do think he's absolutely deserving to be the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year. But at the same time, in a situation like this where he's already only playing 26 to 28 minutes a night, largely because, they don't have to play fourth quarters because they've been blowing teams out, but also because he is still someone who is susceptible to foul trouble and can pick up quick fouls in a hurry as well. And to do so now, like you said, when they don't have that backup in Steven Adams, to be able to alleviate some of that pressure, I think is going to put them in a pretty tricky situation on certain nights where, you might have to now lean on too many Xavier Tillman minutes or Santi Aldama minutes if you want to go small ball. That provides not only opportunity for teams to score against them, but like I said, I think it completely changes their offensive structure in its entirety, right?
Yeah, I think one player you left out too that I'd like to see take advantage of this opportunity, because one thing we've noticed about the NBA with these moving parts, with the guys in and out of the lineups, where I was kind of playing before the show starts to pencil most of these guys in for 60 games. You have to be real fluid when you're making these numbers. Hey, Brandon Clark, right? A guy that we're really on. Maybe a great opportunity for him, right? So, right now you have to downgrade this team without Adams in the lineup. But if you're Taylor Jenkins, if you're a Memphis Grizzlies fan, you think, hey, maybe this is an opportunity, right, for Tillman to kind of solidify his role in the rotation, for Brandon Clark to step up a little bit, for Tillman to get a little more chemistry with some of these guys, so we're not as worried about these minutes, because I think that some of them are going to inevitably happen. I don't think Jaren Jackson's going to be foul prone his whole career. This isn't something he's going to grow out of. He's gotten better, but he's always going to be a handsy guy. He's always going to be a physical guy. And, with as much contact as he makes, he's going to be in foul trouble some nights. So it is an opportunity for the team, but I agree with you. You have to downgrade this team right away. And then let's see if they use this opportunity to develop some of these other guys. And I'll tell you what, if there's any coach who I believe in his developmental ability, it's Taylor Jenkins. He seems to be getting the most out of these guys. I mean, the fact that they could lose a player like DeAnthony Melton and not lose a beat shows how much they do believe in his ability to coach these guys up. So, hey, I'd love to see where this stands at the end of the 3 weeks. I'm downgrading him for now with Adams out, but I wouldn't be surprised if by the end it's not as much as we have it as right now.
Yeah, that's definitely a fair assumption to make. I think you're completely spot on that Taylor Jenkins, if anyone, is probably the guy to help them through a situation like this by using the pieces already at his disposal and getting those guys to play up to a certain standard as well. But just in the short term, I mean, the opportunities in the marketplace, like you said, it could be, I don't want to say fading them too often, because I still think that they've shown themselves to be a team that can basically rally together no matter what pieces are available on any given night, just their style of play, especially in the regular season. But looking at total specifically, I think this is a good opportunity on some potential unders and some team total unders on them, just because I think Steven Adams does bring more to the table offensively than what the market might recognize. And, like we said, in particular, it does come down to those second chance opportunities he provides. He ranks in the 99th percentile for individual players who account for offensive rebounding percentage. When he's on the floor, the Grizzlies are almost plus 10% better with offensive rebounding percentage than when he's off the floor. They're also plus 8.2 points per 100 possessions better when he's on the floor. And again, I think it's coupled not just with those second chance opportunities, but some of those intangibles like his off-ball screening, his ability to screen for Ja Morant specifically as well, that are going to sort of go a little bit unnoticed and potentially present value on the board. So I do have a play that we'll talk about later on the Memphis Grizzlies team total for tonight. I think their 4-game unders, their team total unders, at least for the next week or so, potentially valuable in the marketplace until we get a better understanding. Spread, do you have anything else to add in terms of potential short-term value that this might offer with the Steven Adams situation in Memphis?
I pretty much nailed it on the head there. I think that, hey, you're right with that team total under. I'm going to downgrade this team for now. But I'm not just going to set it there. I'm going to keep an eye on this, because like I said, if anyone can overcome this in a short period of time, it's going to be Taylor Jenkins and those guys at the Grizzlies who let's be honest, a lot of teams get crippled with injuries. There's a team that, like, I'm not as worried about the injury report as much, it feels like, through the year. I mean, I remember last year, I loved betting them when Ja Morant was out. It's like, you want to give me 3 free points for a team that's not getting worse when he's out? That's fine with me.
Without going on to like a complete tangent here, how hard are you finding it this season to appropriately weigh players' values to the spread? comparatively to the market, are you finding that the market is overreacting to too many players at the moment, where we're seeing lines move 4 or 5 points for guys who probably aren't worth that much, and the value coming up the other side? Because it seems like, I mean, again, this isn't actually something I've measured personally, but it does feel like a lot of these drastic line movements are being overcompensated for, and we're seeing a lot of situations where the other side is cashing, where the number has moved too far for too many individuals.
Yeah, I've actually done pretty well. I told you before the show starts, as part of the work I do at Run Pier, we do daily fantasy mixed in with our betting every single day. So I felt that's really helped me, because the first thing they're doing when they get these injury reports is who's going to take his minutes and how effective are they going to be. I completely agree with you, though, as far as the market moving too much. Now, I think the books are moving the line, and then I think the public's getting there too. And I've always kind of been, and this is, goes back to superstar subtraction, and we might get a chance to talk about this a little later today, because there's one game that's tempted me on tonight's board, but it might be a little bit too much. But the public's kind of pushing it too far there. So you got to remember, all these guys were dudes at every level of their whole life, right? Except, rare, like Scotty Barnes only averaged like 13 points in college, right?
Yeah.
But most of these guys have been the best player on the floor their whole life, and the easiest thing for them to do is score. They're not, they're not riding the bench because they can't score. They're riding the bench because they don't rebound, they don't communicate on defense. They're not good passers. They're selfish. I mean, there's a bunch of reasons, but usually for the short term, these guys can jump in, and there's only 450 of these guys in the league, right?
Yeah.
I mean, these are the very best players in the world. Short term, I do think the market overreacts to injuries. I even see that, when we're chatting sometimes. A lot of people say, oh, I want this if this guy's in. And always, a lot of times I'm like, I don't really think it matters. You either like it or you don't,
Yeah. I think we saw it recently as well with your Sacramento Kings against the Lakers with the Sabonis news, right? They went from sort of, what was it, -3.5.
-2.5 to about -3.5 or +3.5, right? Yeah.
Yeah, insane steam. And like, as much as I love Sabonis, which is probably more, I think, than most people do, that is just ridiculous movement off of someone of that value who, again, as good as he is offensively, like you said, you can get offensive buckets from pretty much anyone else. And it's not like Sabonis's defense is the reason why he's swinging the market that much.
Right. Yeah. And I completely agree. And I think that's a great example, because I think he's got a great chance to be an all-star this year. And if he's not, like, so be it. Right. But regardless, we can say he's a top 30 guy in the league.
Yeah.
And the market moved too much. Right. I mean, there's very few guys, and it doesn't matter who the guy is. It's the replacement, right? Like, guys that, like, I believe in the move is like Jokic. Because who comes in? DeAndre Jordan? Okay.
Yeah.
He's worth those points, right?
Exactly. Yeah, there is still a handful, I think, that can merit that level of market movement. But like you said, it's very much a selective handful. Jokic, obviously one of them. Luka Doncic probably the only other one, because who the hell else is going to step up for that Dallas team when your second best player or third best player is already Spencer Dinwiddie as it is? Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's definitely, I think, something worth monitoring for the rest of the season, and potentially an opportunity as well to get ahead of markets there, or, letting the market do its thing and then buying back the other way when it does move too far. But let's dive into our scouting report for today. We're going to dive into the Golden State Warriors specifically because, like I said, they're just an interesting team to try and figure out at the moment, both short-term and long-term, in terms of what it is they're doing. I think we've all assumed that by this point of the season, they would have figured out whatever issues they had in the early parts, that they would be sort of firing on all cylinders heading into the All-Star break, comfortably in the top 4 in the West, making one more run at it with this core. It hasn't really worked out that way, I think it's fair to say. And I don't know whether they do figure it out before the playoffs, because it just seems like if they haven't already, I'm not sure that they're able to overcome whatever issues currently exist. I mean, at the start of the season, it was all about the lack of bench production that they were getting. The starting units, net ratings and points differentials were fantastic, but you sort of removed them from the equation and the bench came in and things went pear-shaped very, very quickly every single night. Now it's the complete opposite. Their bench production has been fantastic the last couple of weeks, since DiVincenzo has been there in particular, providing a huge spark plug for them. I think Kuminga's really carved out a role for himself as well. They're getting good production from guys like Anthony Lamb. But it's the starting unit that doesn't quite look to be on the same page at the moment. They've now changed their starting lineup. Draymond Green at the 5, so very small, with Jordan Poole in there with the starters. Spread, firstly, short term, can they figure things out enough that they are able to secure home court for the first round of the playoffs? Not that I think it necessarily matters for them, but just from a logistical standpoint, are they going to be able to make up ground and show that they can string together consistent results? And then the second part of the equation is, do you think that this team's ceiling is still what it was entering the season?
So for the answer to your first question, no, I'm not high on this team as a regular season team.
Yeah. Good.
Okay. Most teams, right? They key off their best player's attitude, right? Milwaukee, you feels like has that hardworking chip on your shoulder, 16th pick overlooked Giannis attitude, right? Boston, it's got that Jason Tatum swagger, right? I mean, the guy knows he's good, right? The whole team kind of plays that way. The Warriors are weird in that they don't play off their best player's attitude because their best player is hardworking, hardest workers in the NBA. A great guy, great ambassador for the game. I know some people don't like him, but I'm a big Curry guy.
No, I love him.
But they play off Draymond Green's energy.
Yeah.
And Draymond Green kind of has that fat and happy attitude towards basketball. I think that he doesn't need any more success, and he's happy with his career. He was a second-round pick. He managed to be on one of the greatest teams all time. He's got all these rings. He's got all this money, and he does not bring it every single night. Go back to the incident. I don't even know how this incident happened because supposedly Jordan Poole is a pretty good guy. The only thing that I've heard, just from talking to guys or reading guys around here, the beat writers, I guess Jordan Poole's a big shit talker, like quiet, like Joe Ingles. He likes to say little things under his breath as he's beating you. Not like a big in your face shit talker like Draymond Green. Maybe that's what it came from. I don't think the team's recovered from that. And I don't think that he brings it every night. And I think that the team feeds off him. I think his idea is we're going to get to the playoffs and it's not going to matter. Is it going to matter? We'll find out, because if there's any team, right, that can do this, on the road the whole way and make the finals, I would say that the Warriors have a chance to do it this year, partly because they're the Warriors and partly because no one else in the West has really developed into like a juggernaut, or where you're like, oh, I don't want to face that team. I mean,
for sure.
Denver's number one in the West right now. And I think that they have some flaws. I mean, this is the new NBA with the salary cap. These guys don't play with each other a long time. I don't think we're going to see these great teams, like the 90s Bulls, 80s Lakers, 80s Celtics, stuff like that. So all these teams are going to be flawed. So they might be able to do it. So to answer your second question, I do think their ceiling is as high. I mean, I do think that they could turn it on for those 2 months. So while I'm not going to be high on them to finish high in the regular season, I'll be interested to see once the playoff starts where they are and what they're able to do, because I could definitely see a path where they're able to make it back to the finals. How about you?
Yeah, I agree. I still think that there's a pathway for them to win the West. But I'm also in agreement that I don't think they're going to necessarily figure things out in the regular season for a couple of reasons, and a lot of what you already said. So I don't want to double back on that. But even just listening to, I don't know how many of you guys listen to Draymond Green's podcast, but the most recent one, after they had that sort of 3-game stretch of losing to Boston, but then their backups or reserves won in Cleveland, He sort of spoke about the fact that that's a run of games where they should have gone 3-0 and where a great team would have gone 3-0, and acknowledging that they are just not a great team right now. But what was probably most interesting in that is that he kind of alluded to not being able to understand or recognize why they aren't a great team right now. And I think that kind of speaks volumes as well, where we kind of have these theories, and largely revolving around he himself, both what he brings to the locker room, and then obviously that preseason incident that seems to have been completely swept under the table. But I still think that that's an elephant in the room for them at the minute, and seems to have, if not divided the locker room, at least shown enough cracks that they are in this situation now where the team itself understands, I think, that they have always followed the lead of Draymond Green. And now there might be questionings amongst individuals themselves whether they want to be following someone like that who, like we all saw, turned, if you want to call it that, turned on his own player, or, basically completely overpowered a young in the league who is still sort of finding his feet and who is just coming off of, arguably his best season, and who is potentially a future franchise piece for this team once they are through this current, era of Steph, Clay, and Draymond. And what does that mean then for the rest of the team? And I think a lot of the early struggles, the suggestions were that a lot of those young guys weren't able to get going or weren't able to find rhythm because of that incident, and because of the fact that they were put in this situation where, they don't want to follow the leader. They don't want to be associated with that or with him. And, now that we've potentially moved beyond that, we have this point in the season, like I said, where the starters are the ones that aren't able to get on the same page together. And he has come out and now said that, they're not a great team and that he can't figure out why. How much of all of that preseason stuff in particular do you think is still playing on the minds of the starters? I mean, we've spoken, and a lot of people have spoken at length about the potential impacts it had on the young guys and the rest of that locker room. But do you think it is something that might be on the minds of guys like Clay and Steph currently in the regular season, where they might not necessarily be comfortable with the situation still as to how it went down and to how it was addressed by the organization?
If it's not on their mind, subconsciously it's there. Because once the trust is gone, right, you can go forward and you can try and move it. But once the trust is gone, it's gone. So I'd say it's a big deal. I'd like to also point out one other thing for the Warriors, right? I watched a lot of the Warriors here, made a lot of money on the Warriors, right? Gav used to joke last year. He's like, "You've been so quiet in the NBA chat." I said, "Well, it's for the finals last year." I said, I've been on the Warriors and I don't want to get kicked out of the chat, right? It seems like the whole world's on the Celtics. So I've always been a big Warriors guy. I've always been higher on them most. And what I'm seeing here, and this happens with a lot of teams, I don't know if it's intentional or that they dislike him, but you hear the same guy over and over. Are they like tuning out Kerr? And I'm not saying that they don't like him. I'm just saying they've heard the same message over and over again. And I want to point to the loss against Brooklyn. Okay. So in Brooklyn, they were ahead at 72-60 at halftime, right? And you're like, okay, they're going to beat Brooklyn. They didn't have KD. It wasn't the game that we hoped. Warriors are great at home. This should be an easy win. At the first half, they're ahead 72-60. They had 18 assists and 3 turnovers. Okay. Then we go to the second half. They only have 10 assists and they have 7 turnovers, right? And it's what I saw is this team stopped moving without the ball. This is a motion offense. This team can't go one-on-one. And I know, and I follow a bunch of Warriors Twitter. It doesn't mean I agree with them all because they all want Steph to turn into a little Kyrie Irving, right? Or a Luka Doncic, an on-ball creator, and he's not that. That's not who he is. He wants to move without the ball. This team needs to move without the ball to be successful. You can see when they get lazy, when they get complacent. And it's so funny because for most teams, this happens on the defensive end.
Right.
But with the Warriors, it happens on the offensive end. And maybe it stands out more because we're so used to them being one of the most active offenses in the league. But when they get lazy on the offensive end, I mean, Curry's great and Clay's great, but the system's great too. And they need to work together to get this offense. Clay's not a one-on-one guy. And Steph, he's fine one-on-one, right? If you get him matched up against the right player, hey, he's going to beat that matchup. But ideally, he just wants to catch and shoot wide open after he's ran without the ball and let other people find him. That's where Draymond, I think, gets underrated, his ability as a quarterback, as a passer, kind of, the point forward on the floor. But what I'm seeing with this team is they're lazy on the offensive end, which leads them to getting all these Curry one-on-one, Poole one-on-one. They're not going to win like that. They don't have the one-on-one creators, right, that these other teams do at this point. So when looking at the Warriors, to me, that's their key to success. Going back to our playoff prognostication, I think it'd be pretty easy to assume, hey, this team's going to kick it up effort-wise on offense during the postseason, which is what makes them dangerous. And I haven't really taken a strong take for the Western Conference yet. If you were to pick a team, who would you pick? I mean, I almost default to the Warriors, but it's not something I feel like actually betting on. It's more something I'd rather have a casual conversation about.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of two ends of the floor, I mean, you just touched on the offense needing to figure things out, but their defense as well is not what we've become accustomed to, I don't think, from them this season. They do need to, I saw Noops mention in the chat that they need to remember how to be a top 5, top 10 defense again. And I completely agree with that, because that's the one area where it seems like on a nightly basis, teams are just being able to get to their spots far too easily for me. And in particular, you sort of mentioned the Brooklyn game, and we saw down the stretch of that game where they just could not get a handle on Kyrie Irving. And I know that Kyrie is as good as anyone, off the dribble and creating space for himself, but it wasn't just him scoring the basketball. It was him being able to generate wide open looks for the rest of that team, which should not be happening, I don't think, when you don't have Kevin Durant to worry about either. And this still being a defense that is capable of performing at an elite level. Again, two parts to this question for you. One, do you think that this new starting lineup is going to hinder the defensive ceiling and the defensive floor as well, with Jordan Poole in there and Draymond Green playing at the 5? And then two, do you think that they still have it in them to go back to being a top 5 defense? Because I think ultimately, if they are going to get out of the West, yes, they need to figure out their offense a little bit more and go back to what they know. But two, they need to perform at a much better and much more consistent level on the defensive end of the floor.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Alex. I guess I just give more teams a pass because we see teams get lax on defense all the time during the 82-game season, right? I mean, this is something common. It's rare to see it on offense, so that's why it was standing out to me. Of course, they are going to have to pick up the defense. So I'm curious, and this is where it's really hard for me, because I don't really want to second guess a guy who played with Jordan, learned under Popovich, right? And has 4 rings on his finger while I'm sitting here grinding out, 1 unit bets, trying to bet the NBA, right? I don't know if I like the move. I think that it puts a lot of pressure on Draymond. It puts a lot of wear and tear on him. Maybe they know he's not going to be with the team much longer, right? Like an NFL team that says, hey, this running back's not going to be with us. Let's give him 200 carries this year because it really doesn't matter. It's a lot of pressure on Draymond. And we talked about the defense. One part of that defense, after you stop the team, you got to grab that rebound. Looney's the team's leading rebounder, and he only plays 28 minutes a game.
Yeah,
and you're taking your leading rebounder out of there, and you're already having problems on the defensive end. So in the end, I'm going to trust Kerr, but I'll tell you what, it came as a shock to me, and I'm actually surprised. Even on those really, really good Warriors team, right? They still gave Bogut the obligatory 6 minutes in the first, 6 minutes in the third, right? Just the idea that, hey, we can't do this to Dre and these guys for 48 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So I hate to second guess a guy that he's a top 5 coach in the league to me. I know people are hard on Kerr. Would you agree? To me, he's still one of the best coaches in the league.
For me, it's not even up for debate. I don't understand how he isn't automatically in the top 5 of any, current coaches in the NBA. I think he's, I think he's, I wouldn't go so far as to call him a genius, but I think he is extremely well thought out and meticulous in all of his decisions. But this is the one that has stood out to me where I can't make 2 cents of it whatsoever as to what the benefit is for the team, given that they have struggled so much defensively up to this point. And like you said, it's just going to put enormous pressure on Draymond Green in particular at the 5 to box out, to grab those rebounds, specifically in a matchup like tonight. I know there's no Steven Adams, but this is still a Warriors team that crashes the board aggressively on the offensive end when they miss shots, loves to drive to the basket, loves to put pressure at the rim. And you have no rim protection really when it's just Draymond in there on his own. And I think that I tweeted out the other day, I do still think that Kevon Looney might be one of the most underrated and undervalued players in the league, especially by their own fan base, because I don't understand the constant trash talk that he gets and the constant Warriors chatter that they need to upgrade the 5 so desperately. I think that, as long as the other 4 are operating as they should be, then Looney is the perfect 5 for that system because he knows the system inside out. He knows his role inside out. I think he's an above average rebounder, an above average defender. And that's basically all you want as someone in this lineup, like I said, playing the 5 who can roll to the rim and can do their job.
Yeah, I agree. Underrated athletically, and playing a lot of those DFS showdowns against the Celtics in the finals last year. He was huge. He was in my lineup every night.
Yep.
He was always getting big rebounds, important rebounds, putbacks. For the amount of minutes he gets, yeah, I believe he's underrated as well. So let's see how long this lasts. Let's see if it even matters, right? Is it just window decoration and he's still getting 28 minutes a night? It's just a different 28 minutes. And really, Kerr just wants him out there with the younger guys like Kuminga. I mean, is this a referendum on Wiseman? I mean, I don't want to make too much of this, right? Because maybe you say, you know what? I need him out there with Moody, Kuminga, right? This young kid, because a lot has been made, especially in Northern California with the local media, of this 2 timelines deal and whether or not it's actually possible.
Yeah.
And they get so much criticism every time they go through a losing streak. And I personally, like I said, I think the issue is that their main guy, Draymond, their actual leader, is not 100% focused. I think the 2 timelines could be pulled off. I think you have a guy that just, and maybe it's the way he is, right? Because the guy runs, when you run that hot, maybe it's just not possible to run over 82 games, right? And he's also 34 years old. It's got to be hard to be mad for that long, right? You accomplish that much. I mean, what? So we're going to see how this one turns out. In the long term, I'm a believer in the Warriors. In the short term, not so much.
Yeah, I think I'm with you in its entirety, and I think the long term potential for them also, like you said, boils down to the fact that you look at the West and it's just so even keeled at the moment that you kind of fall on them just because of history and their ability to put it all together, more so than anything that we've necessarily seen from them this season that suggests that they are capable of hitting a certain level. So,
and they are free rolling too, right? Jaws got pressure on them. Jokic has pressure on them. These guys have never done it before. Even if the Warriors lose this year, they're still the greatest players. They're all going to the Hall of Fame. I mean, the big 3. Kerr's going.
Yeah.
We're not taking anything away from their careers. These other guys, everything's on the line. That might work in their favor.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point as well. There's almost zero, which is strange for a defending champion, but there's almost zero expectation on them going into these playoffs, I think, which is, like I said, a ridiculous statement in itself. But I think we are in agreement here with the Warriors, right? Short term, I don't necessarily see them figuring things out and putting together a run of games that suggests that they're going to be at their best. However, I still think the ceiling for them long term is to come out of the West. Would you say that there's any value in them in the marketplace right now to either win the NBA championship or to win the Western Conference at least? Or is it just a team that you're going to prefer to play on a series to series basis by the time the playoffs do come around?
Yeah, I'm not there. I don't think there's any reason to tie it up.
Yeah.
How much do you think the price is going to improve for the next 2 months?
Zero.
Right? I mean, I guess there's a chance they go on the run, but I just don't see it. I think this team's really going to try and just flip the switch in the playoffs, and it's either going to work or it isn't. And I think it's going to be pretty evident, real early within the playoffs. So I'm fine staying away from it right now. But a future really has to knock my socks off there for me to jump in. There's a different team I actually like a future for a little more. I don't know if we want to go into that now or we want to finish the Warriors.
Well, I think we're pretty much done on the Warriors. We're going to dive into anyway our bets that we've made, so we can touch on it. We'll look at today's slates first, and then I'll let you tell me what it is that you've eyed off in that futures market. But bets we've made, those that are watching on YouTube, you can see there the screen. They're the bets I've locked in personally already for today. There is one more that I'm eyeing off. Negative position on the Minnesota Timberwolves that I bet last night with the news that Brandon Ingram is probable for tonight, and it looks like Najee Marshall might be back as well. I do like that +3 still on the Timberwolves there. I think that they're in a pretty favorable spot, and I do like the matchup for them. I don't know what to expect from Ingram first game back off of quite a lengthy layoff as well. I like the Atlanta Hawks tonight, which is something I've not said for a long time. I'd be curious to see what Noob says in the chat about the Atlanta Hawks. I'm sure it's been a while since he's been involved in one of their games. Definitely for the better there. I am going to take the Memphis Grizzlies team total under tonight on the back of what we spoke about earlier, where I just think that their offense might be the sort of biggest part that is hit in Steven Adams' absence. And I think that this is a game, obviously, with a lot more significance than most regular season games. And that seems to bring out the best in the Golden State Warriors anyway. And I jumped in on the Spurs plus 6.5. I've bet the Spurs for the last 3 games now. It's getting a little bit painful to watch. It's not an enjoyable experience whatsoever. We'll see what happens with LeBron as well, in particular in that one. But those are my positions for today. Spread. Thoughts on any of those? Are you opposite in any of those ones? And then have you made some bets as well for today's slate?
Memphis kind of correlated there. I laid it with the Warriors.
Yeah.
I'm big on the Warriors. And I said, when they try, this is a really good team. The effort is really low. I love the confluence of events, right? It's a top team in the West. They had the semifinal last year. They've never liked each other since that foul, right? I mean, they might have already not liked each other, but the foul on Gary Payton, right? I know he's not with the team anymore, right? But they have not liked each other since then. Klay Thompson, who's like the chillest dude in the world, like all the dude is like, he just like smokes weed and bangs Instagram models all day, right? Like no reason to ever be mad. Comes out and talks about a tweet that they made at him, right? So if you get Klay riled up, you're definitely like, you're doing a good job of being annoying. So that team with all the potential that we talked about earlier that could come alive in the playoffs, I think we see a glimpse of it tonight. So it's correlated because I actually like the under in that game too. I took the full game under. I think it gets a playoff atmosphere.
I might join you on a full game under as well. I can't get that number that high in its own right without adding in, like you said, those intangibles of it being probably more of a playoff type atmosphere, a slower paced game, and one that the Warriors care about, which is sometimes it can just be as simple as that.
Your Hawks pick. So we talked about this on my show earlier, and I actually like this game just for me to talk about something that I believe in as an NBA bettor. I don't think the NBA is like baseball where you can just run a model and just bet it and not watch the games and not pay attention. So when I bring forward my projections, to the other guys that I work with, I say, if you can give me a reason why you think these are wrong, I'm fine to just disregard them. We're not just betting them because they say it, right?
Yeah.
And they made a great point. They said your Hawks numbers are way off because when have they been healthy? Right?
Yeah.
So you're creating a number off a team that isn't there anymore, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And a lot of the matchups we individually liked as well because we thought that the Hawks, even if Okongwu sits, and I don't know if we've got that news yet. I didn't have it when I kept it earlier.
No.
Regardless, if it's just Collins and Capella, that's enough size to trouble the Thunder up front where they're really vulnerable on the defensive end. So I thought this game was a fun example of why I do believe you should create your own numbers, but I don't think you should blindly follow them, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because sometimes they're like that Office episode. They're going to be like the GPS that just rides you into the lake, right? So you got to make sure you're paying attention too.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you said. And like you mentioned, I think the biggest on-court mismatch is just going to be that front court for the Hawks. I think that vertical spacing for Trey and DeJounte, having Capella there and then having Collins who can both play above the rim. And if you chuck Okongwu into that situation as well, it's just probably going to be too much for OKC to have to deal with. And they're a terrific defense in their own right. They do a great job of sort of preventing teams from getting into the paint and operating in there. But one thing that they have struggled with all season is teams that provide vertical spacing. And that is exactly what the Hawks have in abundance. And they have 2 guys who can comfortably as well operate outside of that and, get the ball into those guys in the areas necessary for them to take advantage. So I agree with what Noob said in the chat as well. I think Capella should absolutely feast today. Points, rebounds. There's no reason for him not to put up as big a numbers as possible in the minutes that he gets tonight. Okongwu as well will have equal success, I think, as well when he does touch the floor, assuming he is good to go tonight for the Hawks. So I'm pretty bullish on that position. I did almost go a little bit higher. Like you said, it's one of those where my number was kind of on the market though, and that's why, I had the Hawks, I think -2, so that's the only reason why I didn't go larger on that one. But just from a matchup perspective, I think this is one of those games where Atlanta can really take advantage of what they have offensively, and that should be enough to put pressure on OKC in a way where we probably don't need to worry too much about what the Hawks are able to do defensively if they're able to score at will on the offensive end of the floor. The chat has also highlighted the fact that I just seem to love the Spurs and love the pain that comes with betting the Spurs.
I have to ask you, Why?
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
I didn't bet the game. I projected Lakers by 8, right? But I was fine staying away from this game. There's so many moving parts. I mean, do we even have LeBron news yet?
We don't. We do not have any LeBron news whatsoever.
I thought he was going to play. The guy I work with, Tyler, who's pretty good at this, he thinks he's going to sit. So,
I bet this last night, and I was pretty confident that he would sit. I said probably 60% he sits, 40% he plays as of last night. But for whatever reason, I seem to keep showing value on the Spurs for better or worse. It's worked out for me. I don't know how many of the last 10 Spurs games I've bet. It's too many.
Have you been winning betting them? I mean, I almost like scratch them off. I usually don't like laying big numbers, and I don't know.
I pulled up the spreadsheet the other day. I have been profitable betting the Spurs this season.
Oh, okay.
Which is strange in its own right.
You should get extra money for that.
Yeah,
like, you should get a bonus for that.
I was on them against the Clippers with what was probably the most fortunate cover I've had. I think it's fair to say this season. They looked to be covering. I think they deserved the cover over the course of the full 48 minutes. But the way it played out in the final 36 seconds was just absurd. The Clippers going 0 for 4 at the free throw line. Keldon Johnson hitting back-to-back threes.
Oh, yeah, that one? Okay.
Yeah. So they snuck in the back door for me there. I then had them against Portland. I grabbed a +9. That one closed 7.5, 8 in most places. That was all tied up at 72 at the half. And then the Blazers went on what I believe was a 20-3 run where they just could not miss a thing. I mean, no one was missing in the first half, but they literally couldn't miss a thing from beyond the arc. The Spurs could not keep up. That game blew up. Spurs lost by about 20, I think, that day.
Yeah, it was 147, 127.
Yeah. So that one was the true San Antonio experience. The one thing I need to I've sort of looked into it already as it is, but I think I need to action a little bit more is with these Spurs, like when I do play them, when I play some of these bad teams with inflated numbers, they seem to be cashing the first half, obviously, a lot more comfortable than they do the second half. And there's obviously a few reasons for that. Is the opposition overlooking them a little bit and then they turn it on in the second half? And then how much does the bad team that we are on really care about the second half when, the other team does turn it up? They seem to be more sort of invested in just getting through their sets, their reps, understanding, what it is that they're trying to do out there on the floor and not worrying about the scoreboard. So we have seen time and time again, especially in the month of January, the Houston Rockets are the perfect example where their first half spread is hitting at above 56%, yet they are the worst ATS team in January because they are the worst fourth quarter team right now by some margin. I think it's they were like minus 10.5 points net rating in the fourth quarter alone in the month of January last week. I don't imagine that's necessarily changed too much either. I know they had that good win against Minnesota last time out.
I mean, you have to give the Rockets credit for being innovators in the NBA landscape to try and be the first team that just refuses to run plays. They treat the whole season like a pickup game. I've seen more formative plays in an and one game. I mean, they just take turns doing dribble tricks. It's unbelievable what's going on there in Houston.
It's infuriating as well because there's so much young talent on that roster. And I know I've heard it on other podcasts as well, where it's a dangerous game that they're playing, where if they're allowing these young guys to essentially do whatever the hell they want on the court, without any sort of real veteran leadership in there, sort of pulling their heads in and getting them to play basketball the right way and not learning the fundamentals that need to be executed in games down the stretch at this moment in time where they're still in such a developmental stage of their process that it's going to just hinder them in the future. And then guys like Jalen Green obviously come to the fore of that conversation immediately where they are just allowed to do whatever the hell they want offensively. I think we saw John Wall speak about it on the podcast recently as well, saying that, someone needs to pull their heads in. What do you think about that situation without going again too much on a tangent?
No, I'm fine with the tangent. I completely agree with you there. And I've talked about it before. I think this is showing the danger, right? When people want to completely blow it up. Oh, blow it up. Trade every single buddy, right? Get 1,000 draft picks like OKC. I think that the Houston Rockets in particular, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's a coaching issue, right? Because maybe if they get the right guy in there, this switches. but you can't develop that many people at the same time. And I think if you look at Jalen Green's recent explosion without Kevin Porter Jr. in the lineup, it makes perfect sense to me. The team looks like it's a more functioning offense now with one primary ball handler, more role players supporting him. So I completely agree. And if I'm the Rockets, I'm watching what's going on right now. And if I can get a second for KPJ, I'm happy. I think I get him out of there. I try and get him. He's going to have to go somewhere. I don't know if he has the mental to do it, right? I don't know if he's just ever buying that role. He's got to become that Jordan Clarkson 6-man guy. I just don't think the KPJ is ever going to be the starter on a team that's going to be standing in the Final Four. I think he could be coming off the bench, doing some Jordan Clarkson, some old Jamal Crawford. I mean, to me, he just looks to me like a microwave. I put him in for 20 minutes. He gets me 20 points on the bench, and they give up 20 points, but my starters fall behind. So when they come back in, right, my bench unit hasn't lost the plot.
I couldn't agree more with you in terms of what I think his future should be in the NBA. However, to answer your question on whether he would accept a role like that, I think the answer is no. I don't think he's someone who is of that mindset of making sure that they are doing the best possible job to help the team that they are on. I think he is probably a little bit too player orientated and focused on himself. And we've seen glimpses of that in the past, and I don't think he has outgrown that.
And I don't think this is the right environment to get it done, right?
Exactly. I think it's the worst environment to get it done because again, they've probably given him too much leeway already that to try and rein that back in now is going to be a near impossible task. Right?
I mean, isn't Silas younger than me? I mean, he's probably going out with the guys after the game. I think it might be hard for him, right?
Yeah, definitely. But anyway, enough about the Houston Rockets today. Unless you're betting them, do you have anything else to add to the slate? I mean, let's not dive into why I'm on the Spurs. I just am.
That's actually the most important question of the day. I mean,
look, I think. Okay, so I think that there is a good chance that LeBron does sit in this one now that they're welcoming back Anthony Davis. But he's obviously going to be capped at 24 minutes, I believe they said. They're going to aim for 20 to 24 minutes for tonight. Rui Hachimura is in the lineup, which is great for them. But I do still think that when you look at the Spurs and what they're able to do in terms of scoring the basketball, their offense has been pretty good lately. Obviously, their defense is a completely different question. Their offense has been good, and it's looked good. They are terrific when it comes to attacking the rim and putting pressure on the rim. How prepped is Anthony Davis going to be defensively to be able to deal with that for a full night? I don't know. I think that, the Lakers metrics show you that they do give up a lot of opportunity in and around the rim. And I do think that the Spurs can do enough offensively to sort of keep themselves in this game for the most part. Defensively, obviously San Antonio's flaws are pretty well known, but I think that the Lakers offense might be trying to sort of force feed and run through AD probably a little bit too much. If he's showing any sort of rust, we might get the opportunity to take advantage of that. And then outside of that, if LeBron's sitting and AD's capped at 24 minutes, do you trust the rest of this Lakers team offensively to generate the good looks, even if it is against a subpar defense?
I get the Lakers so wrong. I was so ready for them to be bad. I was so ready for them to ship that number one pick and have it be Victor, kid from France, right? And just, as a Kings fan, victory lap, because that's all we can do. This year we can actually root for our team, but for most years we can just root against the Lakers because our teams are relevant. So I'm not really sure what to make of them. I do think you make good points, and I'll be rooting for you. Let me put it that way. Right? I don't know if I'm ready to jump on board this San Antonio.
Don't do it. Don't do it. You don't have to do that. I wouldn't recommend it either. The Timberwolves, the other one we haven't really touched on. I think they're still a little bit better than what the market gives them credit for at the moment. I think the Pelicans are a little bit worse than what the market has them at right now. Even with Brandon Ingram back, it's going to take time for him to sort of adjust, I think, to being back out there on a nightly basis. He's been off for quite a while. That injury was just weird. The situation, I think, was just weird. So I like the Timberwolves there. I think they're live to win that game outright. It's a tough spot for the Pelicans as well. Obviously, the back-to-back, and I think it's fourth game, 6 nights for them versus a pretty well-rested Minnesota team. So do you have any opinions on the Pelicans, either tonight or in the short term?
So for that game, my thing is, for your sake, I hope Rudy's out.
Yeah, I'm like,
it's
I'm
been when
rooting for it
Rudy's
as well,
out, I
man.
bet the T-Wolves. When he's in, I fade him. That didn't work. That didn't work at all. And it was fun. I did a pod with Coach Goodman. I don't know if you've seen him. He's big guy on Warriors Twitter, right? He has a lot of strong
Great
takes.
guy.
And I asked him about the Timberwolves because that was one of the teams I had to take, my biggest preseason L's on, because I went on all the preseason preview shows and touted the Timberwolves and said, hey, I don't know about them in the playoffs, but, they're going to be a top 4 team in the West.
I was there with you, man.
Rudy's a regular season player. And I said, Coach, why did I get this wrong? Why did I get this wrong? And he brought up, hey, if you were going to run that team the way it's run, you needed an old school head coach. Because none of these new guys can run a too big defensive lineup. Yeah. So you have a player that you basically brought in to defend, right? But now the defense that you're running doesn't acclimate his skill set. It's doing what he doesn't want to do, which is get out on the floor, which is what everyone did against him in the playoffs. But the idea is in the regular season, teams aren't going to care that, the scouting report goes from 3 words to 3 pages, from 3 lines to 3 pages from the regular season to the playoffs. In the regular season, we can get away with it, but it just hasn't been the case. And the fact that Chris Finch hasn't been able to design a solid 2 big defense for them has been the downfall of this team. So you go back into the scheme or the style that Finch wants to run, and that's 1 big or a small ball 5, and you're fantastic. So that's my concern there. If I have the Pelicans tonight, I want Gobert out of the lineup. Ingram is something interesting, right? Alex wants to send Glenn Ruse there. It might actually work. But he knows, right? He knows that I'm big on the superstar subtraction, right? And that's the idea of the first game, that the superstar's out. The rest of the players
theory that you have dubbed, right?
Yeah.
It's originated by you, as far as I'm concerned. One that references it and calls it anything else, whether it's a Ciroc on ice game or anything like that. It is a superstar subtraction game. It was invented by Spread way back when, and it will, I think, hold up for the rest of time. I think it's fair to say, right?
But way back when, I also looked up Superstar Edition, and that was, hey, when the superstar comes back to the lineup, right? Or in this, just a high usage guy, because Ingram's a high usage guy. We don't want to argue about whether or not he's a superstar, but the high usage guy comes back in the lineup. I found no edge either way. It came out to like 51%, right? So it was like you can't really bet it against the big and get an edge. So I don't really know what to make of Ingram being back, if that's helpful or not. Like the past data shows that it's really a coin flip on whether or not he comes back. And maybe a lot of that is, does the guy come back rested? Does he come back rushed in the lineup? My guess is they didn't rush him, right?
Oh, they
he's been out for a long time.
He's
maybe he's
been
ready to
expected
go.
back for about 3 weeks now.
Yeah, maybe he's finally ready to go. So that's just my thoughts on that other game. I can give out 2 plays that I went for tonight. I already told you that I like the Warriors, and I took the under there. I'm on the over in the Brooklyn Nets and the Philadelphia 76ers. And I said that, hey, I don't blindly just play the models, but that was just a model play.
Okay.
Like, I don't really have a lot to support it. I didn't see something, watching these 2 teams that makes me think it's going to get there. But I had a huge edge to the over in that one. And I also had a smaller edge. This wasn't a big one. I contemplated playing it, but I've been running good lately. So, when you're running hot, you got to ride these streaks. So I said, I'll ride the small edge too. I took the over with the Pacers and the Magic. Pacers are on the back-to-back. And we always debate this. And I know we've talked about it in the chat, and it's going to be, the chicken and the egg, free will, determinisms type deal. Does the fatigue help you on offense or defense? So here we're hoping that it makes the defense lackadaisical.
Yeah. Matt just asked as well, the future that we sort of hinted at before in terms of bets you've made. So have you made this futures bet yet? Or
yes,
are you just buying it off?
And so this is fun because I think it gets to show you why, I'm saying, hey, I actually am high on the Warriors. I think they got a good chance to make it, but I'm not going to bet it because I think the Warriors team that we see right now is pretty much going to be the same. They might make a nice little trade deadline pickup, right?
Yeah.
But I want to target a team that could radically change or radically improve at the trade deadline, right? So what I'm betting right now isn't really the team that I'm betting on, right? And the team that I circled there was the Dallas Mavericks. 30-1 over at FanDuel. At one point last week, I got it when they're a bookmaker, 42-1. They're about 28-1 on Bet Online. But here's my idea. This cupboard is pretty full for this Dallas Maverick team. Important part of the Porzingis trade, they got rid of the salary, but now, you split it into two, right? So it's easier to move two small salaries rather than one big salary, especially if it's a guy that nobody wants, unless you're aiming at mediocrity like the Wizards, then, hey, Porzingis is your guy. So they have that. Now, technically, they don't have those draft picks, right? But all they have, they can't access them because in the original Porzingis trade in 2018, it's a lottery protected, right? They're not going to be in the lottery, right? So the idea is they can call up the Knicks and say, hey, right, we'll take all the protections off, right? Let's be honest. You guys are getting the pick this year, right? I mean, they got the worst end of that Jalen Brunson deal. I don't know if there's that much animosity between the front offices, but my idea is that the Knicks would be like, sure. Then that opens up all their draft picks to be able to trade. So you have the full chest of the first rounders and a bunch of just contracts of different players that people might want, Josh Green, one of them, a young guy. And who's the other guy? Jaden Hardy, the guy that I was mad. We sold our second round pick. I wanted Jaden Hardy out on the Kings. Those are two young guys. You throw them in there, a bunch of first round picks, and maybe you can get, the type of player to make the difference at the deadline. So if I'm betting the future right now, it's because I think they can radically improve between now and when the playoffs start. And the team that I chose there is the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah, I like it. Brave, that's for certain. Definitely brave. I think my concern with the Dallas Mavericks, aside from like some obvious things as they're currently constructed, is they may have run the course with Jason Kidd now.
You think so, huh?
I think so. And I look back at where in the past as well, where he has this potential and this history of improving teams notably, especially at the defensive end of the floor. And then the following season, it seems to just drop off. And that's kind of where we're at right now. And in the past, he hasn't been able to recover that and get them back to playing the level of defense that they were the season prior. And then, he obviously ends up losing his job in those respective roles in Brooklyn and in Milwaukee. But I think that we're at that situation now, that crossroads, where it seems like the drop-off is real, and I don't think it's going to be able to be amended under his tutelage. Now, whether that's because he doesn't command the respect of the locker room enough for them to buy in again. And like you said, maybe it's one of those situations where, with the Warriors, are they just sick of hearing the same voice? Kidd's voice probably doesn't carry the same level of authority as someone like that. And other players there now sick and tired of hearing the same thing probably after every single game. He's a guy that preaches defense on a nightly basis, even in the regular season. Are they not buying into it anymore? And like Noops said in the chat as well, it's crazy how much they miss guys like Maxi Kleber. Like, it just seems like that the system and scheme is so heavily reliant on those pieces like Kleber and like Dorian Finney-Smith, who also are just so limited in their production outside of the defensive end of the floor that it ends up hindering the ceiling of this team and limiting what it is that they can actually achieve as currently constructed. And then, like you said, if they go and make moves, it's all good and well, but are those guys going to be able to come in and basically adhere to the system that that Kidd wants immediately? And we saw that sort of teething process with Christian Wood, where there was just this refusal to have him in the starting lineup for so long, even though he clearly is the second best guy on the roster. So my concern, with the Mavs is I don't think that they have a future with Jason Kidd, and I think that they're going to see that.
I never really considered that before. I definitely love to hear your opinion. When you talk about the Maxi Kleber, I would say how much is maybe that defensive liability not Kidd's fault, and the fact that you do have to put Christian Wood in because this roster is basically, you got a bunch of one-way guys, right? I mean, this isn't a versatile roster, right? He's not like what's the guy, Joe Mazzulla out there in Boston.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got so many different options, right? It's like he's playing chess and he's got 5 more pieces on the board than the other coach. He can move his guys all over the place. Kid's got 4 pawns and a queen. So that would be just my pushback there. And I'm wondering, I always thought the kid got a lot of respect in the locker room. I basically heard stories that he can go out and still kind of hang with those guys like on the court. He keeps himself in good shape. He's one of the best players ever, right? It's not like, Rick Carlisle, where they're like, who are you, dude? Like, what do you do? Have us run George Mikan's offense, or, like tell us more stories about Will Chamberlain? Like, get out of here. So that'll be interesting to see. Of course, on a 30-1, right? You're never going to have a golden path to the finals. Exactly. But my last point would be just going to how, maybe Adam Silver called up Roger Goodell, because this West has such parity that all teams are flawed, right? So you're going to take a chance with someone, and I think that any future that we brought out, you're going to be able to basically poke holes in it. So I personally like it better. I like the fact that there's 4 games between 12 and 5. And it's so crazy because the players care less about the regular season, but with the effect of home court and how even these teams are, the regular season matters more than ever.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
What a situation we are in. All right, so that's the bets we've made for today, and then that spreads futures bet. Let's wrap it up. Let's get into the one segment that everyone wants to watch, and that is Squad Ride.
You're very confident, I'll say that. But you shouldn't be.
All right, Spread. Here's the thing. We have a Discord channel. We have a Discord chat filled with 900 odd DGen bettors who are equal parts sharp as a knife and sharp as a marble. Now, they put forth their best bets for today that they are riding. I will read them out to you, and it is your job on the show today to pick out the top Squad Ride best bet that we are all going to tail. No pressure, but they are 2-0 so far this season on the Board Better show. So let's have a look at what they have put forth today. Now, we have Raptors Kings first quarter over 61 points. I feel like there is no better person to talk about a Kings game than you, my friend. So Raptors Kings first quarter over 61 points is the first squad ride bet option. The Golden State Warriors first quarter -1, which I guess correlates with both of the 2 plays that we have officially for today as well. The Utah Jazz first quarter +1 at Portland, who are in quite the situation at the moment as well, but that's a tangent. And then a couple player props. Ben Simmons under 23.5 points, rebounds, and assists tonight against his beloved Philadelphia 76ers. And Draymond Green over 14.5 rebounds and assists tonight. He's obviously playing at the 5, so there is a lot more pressure on him, particularly in the rebounding side of things. And like you said, when we get the best version of the Warriors offense, it generally involves him operating at a very high level and clicking over with those assists. So of those plays, I'll reread them really quickly to you. Raptors Kings first quarter over 61, Warriors first quarter -1, Jazz first quarter +1, and then the player props, Ben Simmons under 23.5 points, rebounds, assists, Draymond Green over 14.5 rebounds, assists. Over to you, Spread. Of all of those, which is your favorite squad ride for today?
Got to go over with the Kings. This team, if you're ever, here's a tip. If you're ever going to play a Kings over, just play the first half. Because these guys get tired out running up and down the floor. Look at Monday night. Monday night, they had an 80-point first quarter. The game went under. These guys were exhausted. I love that first quarter there. I can go over all the picks real quick. I see
Absolutely.
The tiers over is a lock, but I actually don't like the Ben Simmons under. And I'm going more off the DFS, but I know that Ben Simmons had 50 fantasy points the last time that they played against the 76ers, and he did score very many points. So I think he's going to do a lot out there. This is a revenge game for him. Maybe the man could show a semblance of heart, a semblance of caring about his profession tonight. Maybe this will be, because he actually did last time he played against the 76ers. The Jazz, so I like the Jazz there against Portland. The first quarters, I'll tell Alex does a first quarter. I don't run a first quarter model, so it's a little harder. And you really, to do that, you have to know who runs their starters for the full first quarter.
Correct.
And who pulls them out with 3 minutes to go, right?
Yeah.
that could be a good way to really manipulate that market. And I'm not up on it. So I kind of like that one. I do like the Draymond. Yeah, that was nice of him, huh? Yeah, he didn't give anything. He didn't give anything to the Lion though, because he had absolutely nothing for him. The Draymond, I like the over as well. We talked about this one. Hey, we actually can get 100% effort. I mean, I think that guy out of anybody. It's so funny because he made it to the league off hustle, and now he's the most inconsistent with this hustle night in and night out.
Yeah,
it's the definition of irony, I guess. And then what was the last play that they gave out? The Warriors first quarter, right?
Yeah, the Warriors first quarter -1.
Yeah, I'm trying. I'd have to go over the. I'm trying to remember if Steph plays the whole first quarter or not. And when I remember when I was doing them a lot with Alex, I swore that Steph went out early in the first quarter.
He did. I'm just trying to remember these last two games specifically. Now that they have Poole in the starting lineup, I can't remember what they've done the last couple of games. Because obviously,
I would just hate to bet that, and then Steph sits the last 3 minutes of the first quarter and comes back in to start the second.
Yeah.
Those first quarter bets, you really got to have the popcorn machine, which is a great website for you guys to just track the rotations, and that helps you so much for making first quarter bets, third quarter bets, and he's pulling up popcorn machine now too. So.
Perfect.
But I'm going to go with that Kings over. If you ever like the over in a Kings game, just take the first half over. You can cash it. I know you East Coast guys, you can go to bed early with money in your pocket, right?
Yeah, that's all right. This is the squad ride DJs. They don't go to bed with any money in their pockets most nights. But Raptors Kings first quarter over 61 points is the official squad ride bet for today.
Let me throw that in.
They're trying to go 3-0 on the show, which would be.
I hope so, man. I don't want to be the guy who ruins it.
Discord's popping off, and I tell you what, if they make it to 5-0 spread, I might have to just sell the show to them. At the end of it. So let's ride that Raptors Kings first quarter. I might ride that one with you guys as well. I like that look a lot. I think that, like you said, obviously the Kings just start games playing at 100 miles per hour. I think the Raptors are happy to follow serve as well in a matchup like this. They're a team as it is that just loves to play in transition. The opportunity to run the floor and not have to worry about their half-court offensive sets is going to sit just fine with Toronto. So, I think there's a pathway for both these teams to score and score well in the opening 12 minutes of that one. So that's a pretty good first quarter bet. That's the official squad ride for today. And that is officially the Board Bettor episode 3. I think we've touched on quite a few things. We've gone on a couple of tangents spread, but I've personally enjoyed chatting to you once again about it, and I hope you have enjoyed being on the show.
Oh, man, thank you for inviting me. So much fun. I was glad I was able to make it because, it's been too long. We got to make sure it doesn't go this long again. But I had a great time. Great chat you have here. Great community, so thank you for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. It definitely won't go as long now that this show is back up and running regularly. We'll have you back on, I'm sure, in no time. Hopefully before the All-Star break, we can squeeze one more of these in as well and deep dive into a couple of more things, including your Sacramento Kings. Before we sign off, how has it been being a fan of the Sacramento Kings this season? How much fun are you having?
It's so good. I mean, it's like the guy that's on the full year drought, right? And then he finally starts, meets the hottest chick. I mean, you just got a smile on your face from morning to night, right? You can't get them wrong, right? You get in the car saying, "Oh, my bad. Here's my insurance." It's all good. Hey. So it's been fantastic, and hopefully it continues. I'll tell you what, I've had so many years of disappointment. I had trouble buying in and believing, but now they've hooked me. I kind of believe in this team as far as the regular season goes. I still think, and I'd love to hear your opinion if we got a little extra time, but I just don't know if they have the defense to win the first round. I don't know if Domantas Sabonis can anchor a team that's going to win in the playoffs, that's going to intentionally target him. And not right now, like I said, where you get 3 lines of like, hey, Sabonis is pretty weak, attack the rim.
Yeah. I unfortunately can't give you the level of confidence you might want in sort of retorting that, because I think that's definitely going to be the Achilles heel for them in the playoffs is when the game slows down. Are they capable of getting enough stops, if any stops at all, in order for their offense to really take over games in that particular environment? But I'm
fortunately, we're like the 300-pound guy on Tinder, though. We're just happy to get a match.
Yeah.
Like we don't, right? It's not championship or bust over here. We'll throw a parade for a playoff appearance, okay?
Hey, Noops wants to know if you've got a beam on your house yet. Have you got a mini beam? Have you bought
I
into it?
should. Thank you for the idea. I was my joke. Instead of having a Christmas tree, I had a Christmas beam that we put all the presents under.
Oh, fantastic. Spread, appreciate you taking the time again, my man. It was awesome having you on. Just quickly before you sign off, for anyone in the Discord and in our community who hasn't already come across your work, take 2 seconds to let us know where they can find all your awesome work on a daily basis.
Yeah, at Bettor on Twitter. Right now, I'm writing time changes. It's Monday to Friday. We go through every game. We also give you the daily panic. I see all the work, and I know that you're doing a great job of giving me a great pick with the betting. But if you also want to dabble in DFS, every day. We go over the game not only from betting, but also from the daily training perspective. And as I was telling you earlier, I think it's really helped me this year. Where I mean, a little bit of tightness, right? I mean, all these guys you can pencil in for about 60 games a year. So you need to be able to navigate this news and see what of it really matters, because you spoke about it earlier. A lot of it is a smoke, but there's not a lot of fire on these moves, right? You're making a big deal about these guys, but if you understand who's replacing them, what their pedigree is, what their strengths and weaknesses are, you can see, is this really a downgrade to the team? Is it worth 3 points? Well, a lot of cases, it's only worth 0.3 points, right? So you can get a little bit of an edge there. Sometimes it isn't, though. So that's why it's great. And I think that it's really helped me this year. And a year that I think it's been tough to bet the NBA. A lot of people that I know that are real sharp, have been struggling with this season. And, I've been fortunate enough, and cross my fingers, I hope it continues to do really well. But I think that being able to navigate this injury news, as it becomes so much part of the game now. I mean, it's almost like you read the line and you read the injury report when you're introducing a game, doing shows like we do, because it's not guaranteed who's even going to be in there tonight. And even tonight, we're still waiting on big news. Like I said, in that Timberwolves game, we're waiting on Rudy. Yeah. And in your Spurs game, you're waiting on LeBron. That news is going to be the difference between you sitting on a really nice ticket and you sitting on, in my mind, what's going to be a coin flip. Because if he doesn't play, I think the number's about right. But you end up having a good bet because there's maybe a 50% chance he doesn't play. So, you add that up, you're about 66, 70% that you have the right side here. So a lot of fun there. So, of course, check me out at Bettor, and you can find out all that stuff.
Awesome. Thanks again for jumping on, Spread. Everyone in the chat, thanks again for jumping in. It's always a ton of fun having you guys talk your shenanigans there on the side. Best of luck with your squad right actions. Best of luck as well with all of your bets today. We'll be back next week for some more Board Better podcasts and look forward to chatting to you all soon.